So the last couple weeks as I've been preparing for this sermon, I've been asking myself the question, if I had to give one last message to a group of students, if I had to give one last message to a group of students, to a group of parents, to a church family, what would it be? And I started wondering and thinking back about what's the central theme of the message I've had with students in the 3 years I've been here. And if I had to sum it up, it's very simple. Be different. Be different. Be bold. Be willing to stand up when it counts. Be different. What does this idea of being different mean? I grew up in an area where our high schools were huge. I went to a high school with 3,500 students. And I remember walking in my first day of freshman year, amazed at the variety of people that I saw. All right? Now, if you have kids or grandkids or neighbors, some of you probably have neighbors who are going to fit into this story here. All right? I walked into school my first day, and I saw all these kids with this crazy multicolored hair with Elmer's glue in it so it spikes up real high. And they'd have chains connecting their ears to their nose, a giant wallet in their back pocket with a chain that hung down to their knees, jeans that were so wide, each leg, they were wider than me from shoulder to shoulder. And they'd walk around like MC Hammer. Okay? Nowadays, the jeans can't get any tighter. I don't understand how that changed. But you would walk around and you would see these kids who had decided to make an effort to be different. That student woke up one morning and said, I'm tired of looking like everybody else. I'm tired of just doing what everybody else wants me to do. I'm tired of dressing like my mom wants me to. So I'm going to put Elmer's glue in my hair, I'm going to spike it up, I'm going to spray paint it, and I'm going to find the biggest, baggiest pair of jeans I can, and I'm going to walk into school proud and say, I'm different. Now, years later, I appreciate the irony of this, because when I walked into school that first day, I didn't just see one student that made that decision. What did I see? I saw an entire corner of the cafeteria full. So the irony is, those students all claimed, we are going to be different. I am going to be an individual. I am going to be unique and original. And they all show up and they're like, crud. I had the idea first. It's not different. One of my favorite pieces of scripture for the longest time has been Romans 12:2. Paul says, do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is. His good, pleasing, and perfect will. So today I want to talk about what it means to be different. What it means to be bold. Thanks, Pat, for reading that marathon of a passage. We had some conversation this week about just how long that passage is. It's really only 25 verses or so, and that's not that many. But when you have to say the word Nebuchadnezzar 30 times, it gets a lot longer. So thank you. And there's some difficult names in there, but thank you. I wanted to have the whole passage there because it's a crucial story. This is one of my favorite stories in Scripture, because it's one about young people that are willing to stand up and be different and be bold. So I want to give you some context here. So we have these three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they're Jews, okay? You need to know that the Jews at this time, the Jews had been taken into captivity by Babylon. All right, they've been taken back to Babylon. The Babylonian king's name is Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar gathers up a group of elite Jews, okay, the finest that they had to offer, and decides that he's going to train them in the ways of the Babylonian culture. Okay, he's going to give them positions in his government. He's going to show them all that Babylon has to offer. All right? And he picks 4 young men, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they're being trained over a 3-year period to take on these responsibilities. So they've got a reputation. They've got a life. They've got something to live for. But remember, they're Jews. They're Jews that believe in one God, living in a land that sets up idols and worships many gods. I want to know, can you relate to that tension at all? Do you ever feel like you are sitting in church on Sunday, hearing one thing, believing one thing about this guy named Jesus, but then getting up and going to work on Monday morning in a world that doesn't really care at all, in a world that believes in other gods, prays to other gods like money and security? Can you relate to that? No? I should just stop. I hope you can. I hope you can. This is a very real tension. This tension of how do we reconcile our faith with the marketplace? What does God want to do through us in this world? And are we willing to do it? So Nebuchadnezzar, this king, decides that he's going to build an idol, 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, made of solid gold. All right? And if you were paying attention as Pat was reading, you might have noticed that a few times, more than a few times, 7 times in fact. Some people, Tinker's already laughing. Tinker's reading my notes. 7 times in this passage, it's pointed out that who set up this image? Nebuchadnezzar. The image Nebuchadnezzar set up. The image Nebuchadnezzar set up. It's almost as if the writer is trying to pound something into our heads. This is set up by man. This is evil. This is not of God. This goes directly against what he has called you to do. So the king sets up this idol, and he sends out a decree that whenever you hear the music, everyone in the land must bow down and worship the idol that Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And if you don't, you're going to be thrown into a fiery furnace. If you decide to disobey me, death. Again, think about the tension here. Here are these 3 young men who have been put in positions of responsibility, reputation. They have this faith that is deep within them. And they're hearing, unless you bow down, unless you do what I want you to do, you're going to die. Can you relate to that? Can you relate to that? Can you think of a time in your life where your worlds collided like that? Where you're okay with compartmentalizing your faith life and your professional life, or your faith life and your personal life, but then suddenly something snaps and you can't separate them anymore. They're heading towards each other a mile a minute for collision. What are they going to do? I imagine a scene where, at the inauguration of this image, this idol, everybody in the land is just standing there. And the music starts playing, and they know what to do. Like robots, they drop to their knees and start praising this idol. And here are these 3 friends, left standing there by themselves. Imagine the weight that they felt, the eyes of the people around them. Can you believe they're doing that? Do they know what's going to happen to them? So, of course, word gets back to the king. And the king, he knows about these guys. Remember? He's appointed them to these positions. He would have known who they were. And his advisors say, hey, there are these Jews who don't want to obey you. They're making a mockery of you. What are you going to do about it? So the king brings the 3 before them, and he gives them a chance to back out. Now remember, at this point, their reputation is already shot. Because at this point, they will always be the guys that disobeyed the first time. Right? Even if they recant, even if they go back on their word, they will always be the guys that got called into the principal's office to get a slap on the wrist. That will follow them. They were willing to give that up, and they knew it. So the king brings them before his court, and he says to them, "Is it true? Is it true that you have decided to disobey me? Is it true that when you hear the music, you aren't bowing down and worshiping this idol?" Imagine you're working at a company, and you've got a pretty significant leadership role. You're not the CEO, but you're up there, all right? And a memo comes down from the boss, and he says, "We're going to enact this new policy." And you're sitting there, and you know that what he's asking you to do goes directly in line with everything you believe. Suddenly you get that feeling where your heart just gets really hot. You don't know what's going to happen. You start to sweat a little bit. You start fearing the conversation that you know you have to have. You think, well, maybe I can get by a little while without paying attention to it, right? Maybe I can just skate by. Maybe I can just get by a little bit. I can disobey it, but get away with it. Nobody will know. It's no big deal. And then one afternoon, the phone rings. The boss calls you into his office, and he says, "Is it true that this is what you're doing? Is it true that you decided to disobey what I've asked you to do?" And you're faced with a choice in this moment. You're faced with a choice. Are you going to stand up and say, "Yeah, it's true," and take what he gives you? Or are you going to say, "No, it was just a misunderstanding. I'll get right on that," and throw everything away? You've got a choice to make. These three young men, they had a choice to make. The king says, "Is it true that you are unwilling to bow down before this idol?" He doesn't even let them answer the question. He actually right away gives them a second chance. He says, "Now, if you're ready, when you hear the music, bow down before the idol and worship it." And good. Done. It's over. Great. Their response is pretty bold. Let me read this. It says, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter." All right, you get called into the boss's office and he's about to lay into you on something. It's probably not a good answer. I know from being a child, okay? It's never a good answer when mom and dad are going to yell at you about something and you say, "I don't have to defend myself in front of you in this matter." Probably not a good idea, okay? They're saying to the king, the one with the power to toss them into a fire to their death, "We don't have to defend ourselves in front of you." That gives you a little glimpse of how they see the world, how they see power. You see, to them, they had one king. They had one God. They had one man that they served. "We do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand." All right, if you leave it right there, that's a bold statement, isn't it? We don't need to defend ourselves because the God we serve is so big, he's so great, he's so powerful that he can save us from it. If this is where the story ended, this message wouldn't be very different. I would encourage you, be bold like they are. Have the guts to step up and say that your God is big enough to save you from that situation. Tell your boss that you're not going to take it. You're going to walk out right now and you're going to be okay. But that's not where the story ends. He says, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. In the version you read this morning, it says, if not. Even if he doesn't. Even if God decides not to save us in this moment, we will never back down. Imagine the faith that it took to step up and say that. We can all talk the talk, all right? But these guys just set in motion something that would change their lives forever. Not only are they telling the king that their God is so much bigger and better than they are, but they're saying, look, our faith in this God is not based on what he can do for us. Our faith in this God is based on who he is. And even if he decides not to save us right now in this moment, we're still going to trust him. We're still going to obey him. We're still going to serve him. They weren't afraid to put their reputations and their lives on the line in order to stay faithful, in order to be different. They made a bold choice. So the king reacts like the king said he was going to react. He gets furious with them, and he demands that his servants immediately fire up the furnace 7 times hotter than it normally was. Okay? He makes this furnace so hot that the very guys that are in charge of throwing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the furnace die because it was so hot. All they did was stand at the opening and toss a body in, and they died. They throw them in. After a moment or two, you imagine the scene where, the king's trying to get his glory back a little bit. He's just been embarrassed by these 3 punks. And he's thinking to himself, man, when these guys roast, I'm going to feel good. When these guys roast, they're going to know who's top dog again. So they're waiting for that to happen. And suddenly they look in the furnace and they realize that something's wrong. They start saying to each other, wait, didn't we throw 3 guys in there? Yeah. Why do I see a 4th guy? And why does this 4th guy look like the Son of God? What is going on? They're thinking. And then it becomes clear that this God that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were proclaiming, he is very real. This God has shown up in a huge way. So he calls them out of the furnace, amazed. Get out here. What the heck is going on? And the king looks out over everybody, and he says this, let it be known that anybody that speaks an ill word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're going to have a tough time. They're going to be destroyed. Their houses turns to heaps of ash. Their statement, their decision to be bold in the face of such an obstacle changed the heart of this stubborn king. This king finishes by says, let it be known that no other God can save. No other God can rescue. No other God can deliver like this God can. Imagine that. Imagine the moment. What a tremendous witness their faith was in that moment. Now I want to bring you back to that scene in your boss's office. What if your boss got it? What if something clicked? What if in that moment he realized, wait a minute, if you were willing to give all of this up over something small like this or that, whatever it is he's asking you to do, if you're willing to give all of this up for your faith, this God you believe in must be pretty real. This God you believe in must be mighty, must be good, must be true. What if he changed like that? Because you were willing to step up. We live in a time where our world's broken. there's sin in this world, that means it's broken. People are messed up. We make mistakes. But it seems like nowadays with the internet, with TV all the time, we hear more complaining now than ever before. Is that right? More complaining about just how messed up this world is. Whether we're talking at a level in this community, in our schools, all right, in our nation, in our world, whatever it is, things are broken. Things are messed up. What if you decided to be different? What if you decided to be different? And I'm not saying to be different just for the sake of being different. I'm saying, what if you decided to not go along with the lie that society's told us for all these years? To not just live life like they want you to live, but live life like God wants you to live. What kind of change do you think you could bring about in this community, in your family, in this church, in this world, if you decided to be different, to set yourself apart? You know, we have idols that we've set up, don't we? It's probably not a 90-foot by 9 idol in your backyard, but it might be a 70-inch plasma TV in your living room. You know? Or the $75,000 toy in your driveway. Or the boat you'll be on this afternoon. We set up these idols in our lives. We devote ourselves. We surrender pieces of ourselves to these things. Because that's what we're told matters. Guys, we believe in a God that says otherwise. We believe in a God that demands that we love him with all of our hearts, with everything we have. And that when something brings us to that point of tension, that we would have the guts and the faith and the willingness to step up and say, you know, I understand that, you know, this might cost me something. This might cost me a job. This decision might cost me a friendship or a relationship. But I believe in a God that is able to get me through this situation. I believe in a God that is bigger than that. And even if he doesn't get me through it, I'm going to trust him anyway. Think about the people you spend time with on a daily basis. Whether it's your spouse, your kids, your family members, your bunco group, the guys you play golf with, your coworkers, your employees. Think about them. Think about how God would want you to change their lives just by making a difference, just by being willing to not conform, just by being willing to say, I care more about my relationship with God than about doing what you're asking me to do. Does that make sense? I see a lot of nodding heads. I hope that over the afternoon and this week, you take some time to think about this. How is God calling you to stand up? Again, we can complain all we want about how broken our society is. We can complain all we want about how this world isn't perfect. But until we're actually doing something to go against it, doing something to change it, we might as well stop talking because we're wasting our breath. In the moments where you're faced with tough decisions, choices that would go against what God would want you to do, have the faith to say that the God you serve is able to save you. And even if he doesn't, you're going to serve him anyway. Would you pray with me?